Hello and welcome to AXSChat. We're delighted to be joined today by Judy Singer. Judy is sometimes known as the mother of neurodiversity because Judy coined the term. So this is something that we've talked about a lot recently on AXSChat. So it's great to actually feature the person that brought this term into being. So Judy, thank you for joining us from Australia. We've managed to find a slot that works for the time zone difference. Great to have you with us. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also how you came about how the term came about?
Okay, so well, I guess that it starts with my mother. I always thought there was something a bit different about her, and I didn't know what it was. And then I went and looked her up on in the psychiatric textbooks. This was when I was about 15. Finally got allowed to go to the library by myself. Immediately looked her up and found nothing describing her and her behaviors. So I kind of thought, I thought she was deliberately being stupid and lazy, I'm afraid. So it was not a happy childhood. And then I just left it at that, and we had quite a lot of conflict. And then when my daughter was born, this was 30 years ago now, I realized that there was something about her that was very much like my mother, and that's when the penny dropped. There's something hereditary here. This is not chosen behavior. And that was where it began. And eventually I started to realize, well, actually people thought I was a bit odd as well. And that's where it came from. And then there began this process of trying to find out what it was that was affecting our family. And I started to read a book about disability by Anne Shearer, and it was called Disability Who's Handicapped. And it totally reframed how I was thinking about it, and when I read it, that it wasn't our fault. And I remember I just cried all night when I read this book. And as it happened, by this stage, I'd been supported by my father. It is difficult raising an autistic child when nobody's even heard about it. Nobody understands. You have to develop, in those days, Asperger's had only been named. And I lost so many friends. People blamed me for my daughter's behavior or what they thought was their odd behavior. I lost friends. Some people said, oh, it's because you're too strict. Other people said it's because you're too lenient, no support whatsoever. And I knew there was something, but everybody thought, and this is such a common story from my generation with our kids, everybody thought, oh, she's just been neurotic. And this went on, and I just developed a thick hide, and I decided that I knew what my daughter needed, and I protected her as much as I could. I made sure that I protected her at school. I got involved in P&Cs, and I kept looking, and we sort of fell in with ADHD a bit. That was the nearest thing. And then so we had some kind of label to hang on to. But it was when I read Oliver Sacks and the story of Temple Grandin that I had the big aha moment, because I actually had thought my daughter was autistic when I was looking through what is it? Something's going on here. And I read the book, and then when I came to autism, like literally my heart froze because it was just considered the most awful disability. And then I thought, but she can't be autistic because she's the most loving, affectionate child I've ever seen. So, and then when I heard about Asperger's, that's when the penny dropped. And so finally we had an answer. And at that stage, my father had supported me a lot, which allowed me to work. But unfortunately, he died, and it was very hard to get childcare for Ellie because she didn't engage people and they didn't know what to do. So they ascribed all sorts of things to that. So the only thing I could do then, and I was very poor as well, was to go to uni. So I did a degree and I discovered disability studies, and that was like the big aha moment, which just totally changed my life. And then I went on to do honours, and I was invited to join the Sydney Disability Research Network with a lot of academics in it. And that was a really great time. And I started to develop this. I wrote a thesis, which I'm very proud of. It was only an honours thesis, but it was the first time, I think, as far as I know, that anyone actually looked at this from a sociological point of view. And my interest was trying to understand my family history. It was also what intrigued me was, well, how come this disability has suddenly come out of nowhere? So part of my research was about understanding what it was about the postmodern era that suddenly created this new form of disability, which was had just always been written off as eccentricity or something the parents did. And I joined online support groups, lots of different ones. One's for I started the world's first support group for people who had autistic parents as well. And then I joined support groups and became very involved in those. And I worked on my thesis, and it was a new paradigm for disability studies, because this is one of the bones of contention, because I started in the social model of disability, but I really found that I didn't think it was enough to cover this new phenomenon, because it was a totally different kind of disability. Am I talking too much, too fast?
No. This is fine.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yeah, we can hear you fine. So it's fascinating.
Okay.
And we're definitely interested in the different models and reasons and social constructs. So please carry on.
Yeah, sure. So I found that the social model was not enough. At that stage, there were only 3 categories of disability, and you probably had that in Britain too. It was physical, intellectual, and mental illness, the grab bag for everything else that nobody understood. And so the social model had been worked out by people with physical disabilities, mostly. I was very influenced by Tom Oliver. You probably have heard of him. He's kind of the father of the social model. Brilliant work. But I found that with autistic people, we didn't mind the medical model. We were very glad to get a diagnosis, and because it allowed us to meet each other. And I thought that the medical model was actually quite helpful as a source of all kinds of science-based metaphors, and there were computer-based metaphors, and even putting those together was not enough. So what I experienced when I was in some of these social model, sort of, I don't know, anyway, just social model workshops, I remember coming out of one and thinking, we might as well be creationists because of our total disregard of biology, as if biology doesn't exist. And so I added the medical model as well. Like, I wanted to find a synthesis, but then even that was not enough. And then I came across the work of Leonard Davis. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No, I'm not familiar.
So Leonard Davis was another social model theorist of the deaf. He wrote a lot of books. His particularly a book called Enforcing Normalcy. It was really a lot of it was about the deaf movement because they were the people who pioneered disability or deafness as a form of ethnicity, as a linguistic minority, rather than as a disability. They didn't consider themselves disabled. And I thought, wow, we're a neurological minority. And so that's really, I put the three together, I guess.
Yeah. And so that's how concept of neurodiversity came about. I can totally understand the whole desire to find something that fits better than the social model. I'm a fan of the empowerment part of the social model because that's very powerful, but at the same time it can reduce your identity, and it doesn't always reflect some of the difficulties of day-to-day life, which aren't always caused by other people's decisions. Did you hear me okay?
You're dropping out.
Sorry about that. I had some problems with my connectivity. What I was saying, and I'll type it in,
do you want? I'll just keep talking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. What was I going to say? I can tell you while you're typing about where the word actually came from.
Yes, please.
So can you hear me okay? So it's a bit difficult across continents. We couldn't be further away from each other, I guess. So part of it was the decline of psychotherapy. Psychotherapy was falling into a lot of disrepute. It was, the subject of many jokes about, the Freudian stuff and the casting couch and costing a fortune and people going for decades and never changing. And along came neuroscience, and for us, we looked at psychiatry as a sort of high priesthood of secular society. And I guess I realised that the neuroscientists were taking over that role. So that's where I got the neuro from. And then the diversity I got from the Green Movement. I've got an anecdote which I might as well tell you. I'll try and be quick. So I'm Jewish, and I was at a study group. I'm not religious, but it was some kind of study group, and they asked us to come up with a better 10 Commandments. And I thought, oh, this is so going to be rigged. I'm not going to be able to win this, but I thought I can do better than God. Sorry if anyone's religious. And my first commandment was honour diversity, lest we all end up Cactus, because if that had been the first commandment, we wouldn't have all the wars that we have now. So of course nobody heard me and they ignored me, but it stayed with me, and I thought, yeah, diversity is the most important thing in the world. Put together neurodiversity, piggyback on the rise of this new priesthood, make ourselves sound really legitimate, not just a bunch of whingers. We're neurodiverse, and that's where it came from. And I also this was when I was on an online group run by Martijn Dekker, which was fabulous. It was just full of, first of all, it was an e-group, so we just typed our hearts out. Like, we had really long conversations, very intelligent conversations, exploring our identity. Harvey Bloom was on it as well. Um, so he and I were really the only people, I think, anywhere that kind of got the bigger social implications of this. Like everyone was still very much in the self-help model or the medical model, but I was interested in society, and Harvey was interested in literature. That was his job. He interviewed great writers, very brilliant guy. And we threw the ideas around neurological diversity. Um, I think I'm the one that came up, just put it together because I remember a conversation where I was saying, we really need a movement for not just us, because we were already talking about autistics and cousins, the cousins were ADHD, and I thought this is bigger than just autism, and so we need an umbrella movement. And I said this, and I remember saying this, like we need a movement, and neurological diversity is just too much of a mouthful. Let's make it neurodiversity. And that's how it kind of happened. But I didn't, it was only 2 or 3 sentences in my thesis, and I just thought, I forgot about it, to be honest. I didn't even think much about it. It was just, but I didn't quite know all the ramifications. I just knew it was perfect for the times, and it was an intuition, I guess.
Somehow, and considering the story of your personal story, writing that was basically something normal. Probably it was unusual for others. So my question was, how did your peers when you were at university react to that?
Well, I think, well, first of all, I was an honours student, and these were all kind of much heavier academics. And I learned so much from them, but I don't know that they really like I knew I was onto something huge. I knew this was going to. In fact, I wrote in my thesis that I think I did anyway, that autism would be the metaphor for the computer age. That would be the disability metaphor. I was following on again from Leonard Davis, who said the deafness was the metaphor. He had some reasons for that. And I thought, no, this is the age of autism. And the rise of computers. And I said in that in my thesis that computers, I don't know whether this is totally true, but I did think that the computers were the prosthetic device invented by autistics for autistics that turned them into social beings. So I knew that this was going to be, I think I've gone off topic.
No. This is
Remind me of your question again. I must say, aging brain is a part of neurodiversity. Seriously, my memory is really, don't smile, it's not funny. I'm cold and I forget.
No,
that's okay.
It was about how did your peers and people at university reacted to your work?
Oh, right. So, because the disability, I think the disability model, the social model, was state of the art then, and because I didn't buy it, they kept insisting that they thought I just didn't understand it. They thought I was, the past, and I didn't get it. And on the contrary, I thought I was the future, and they didn't get it. But I didn't have much traction, and I just did what I wanted to do with my thesis, and I used what I could, and yeah,
because
understood.
Because I study sociology and applied research, so And so my area of studies is very pragmatic in terms of research and basically connecting with people, doing a lot of case studies and basically connecting with people in order to obtain information. And I had a lot of colleagues, even they're my colleagues today, were very into staying in the academia, and that's how they were living their world. So, Judy, your story, you have lived that. So you were part, what you were constructing of what you're looking somehow was very connected with your own personal life. And I think that would created, you know, somehow, you know, an opportunity that was also unique. And I believe that some people might not able to understand that because they were not as connected as you were. But that's just a that's just a personal opinion.
Well, I had a lot of challenges because I was a sole parent without any family support. The poverty, like disability, can be a poverty trap, and I really couldn't keep going in sociology. And I guess I want to be a free thinker, and as a discipline, I didn't want to have a sociological career because I'm sort of autodidact. I want to link lots of different things together. And I was going to say something, but I can't remember what it was.
But
I know.
I found in fact that the sociological knowledge is actually the base of sociology that gives you some of the resources to make all those connections. I think it's very difficult to find other discipline that can give you that.
I did. Well, yeah, I mean, I really felt that I was standing on the shoulders of giants, but what was difficult for me with sociology, this is horror. They don't, if you say this, it's a discipline that never mentions suffering or love. And they're the two most important things that drive the world. And I didn't like the jargon, so I didn't really want to go further. And anyway, I had to make a living, just had to get out. So, but now I'm thinking, there's so many things I would like to research, and particularly, I guess, the pragmatics of it now. I mean, I see all these industries mushrooming up. What would you call all these startups, HR, training, all these things, and I want to know how effective they are. I want to know, is this like a tulip mania bubble? Are they reaching, is it a middle class thing? I mean, I am a leftist. But there's so many things that I'd like to know. And when I went to the UK, so the other part of it, of course, is this, which I was going to talk about, was the absolute horror of being in Australia. And basically I felt like I knocked on so many doors and being over here, like one of the reasons I was able to do this is because I had a bird's eye view of both the American models and the British and the European. So I was able to put all those together from a bird's eye view. When it came to, I would have so liked to be involved in it, but I knocked on so many doors. And, and then to be discovered 28, about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe, it caused me so much pain. It was like coming out of the permafrost. I just cut, that was my passion, and I just cut it right off. And I want to get back in it. And so since I've got back from the UK and America, where I had speaking, I don't know if this is interesting to you, but it's very interesting to me. It was really, really hard to come back when I had so many ideas, and so many new directions to go in, and wanting to stay connected and just knowing that I'm drifting away and nowhere to go with my ideas. Twitter, just had the most horrible time on Twitter. But yeah, this is important to me. Sorry if it's a bit boring, but
No.
yeah. But on the other hand, I'm starting to meet people in Australia now. I'm starting to network. So over the next month, some really interesting things are starting to happen. So I'm very excited about that, and I might find some kind of way of researching this and moving on.
So you just alluded to there being a bit of a dark place on Twitter. And you've been quite firm about the idea that there are both light and dark sides to neurodiversity, because a lot of the stuff that is mushrooming up now is so accentuating the positive, and we need to do some of that because to balance out the negative views of society before, but equally we can't suddenly undo the fact that sometimes there are these dark sides to neurodiverse people. We're not all saints as well, and that's something that I think we've got a bit of a revisionist history going on now around neurodiversity, where we're all like closet geniuses, and we're going back and identifying people in the past that we think are neurodiverse, and
we all worked all that out 20 years ago. We've got our lists, but I think the first thing about neurodiversity is, of course, it's absolutely nothing new under the sun. It's just saying everybody's different.
Yeah,
that's it. So of course there's dark and light. I mean, when you think about it, people have been battling about the problem of evil and the problem of democracy forever, and that is not new. The other problem is, this, because you said neurodiverse people, which I really have to say something about, because we are all neurodiverse, of course.
Yes.
And I understand that language evolves. So I'm really at the point of, just throwing my hands up and saying, okay, let neurodiverse be a synonym for neurodivergent, because it's convenient, and we've all broken our heads about a better word. To me, I prefer neurominority.
So I get you. I understand, and what I'm doing is I'm slipping into the language that is commonly used. For me, it's grammatically incorrect, because you're right. Diversity reflects the totality, and divergent reflects the fact that we are not part of that larger norm. That we, so therefore, we are a minority. The issues with, and with minority come issues. There come issues of prejudice, misunderstanding, but at the same time, we have stuff to offer. So I think the language is tricky, because wherever you go in the world, there will always be someone that interprets something differently and takes offense at whichever language you use, however well-intentioned. I guess that to a certain extent, maybe academia is the place to resolve that, but then maybe it's not, because actually quite often there can be a disconnect. So I don't know. I struggle with finding the right words, and sometimes I slip into the language that is commonly used. But I think your point is absolutely right. We need,
Well, I'm not really judgmental about it anymore. I just kind of keep wanting to keep neurodiversity as a thing, to remind us all that we're all different. And I don't feel punitive. I accept it now that that's the way the language is evolving. But I do put my faith in the dialectical process, which is like, I don't know if you know what the dialectical process is, but I'm sure Antonio. No, it's so simple. It's like you have this great idea, and it's going to save the world, and creates its antithesis. There's always it's always going to be flawed, and some people are going to jump on it. So there's the thesis, and then there's the antithesis, and then there's people fight it out, and then it evolves. There's a new synthesis, and that's what's going to happen. And if the word is, if it's not useful, it'll die off. Because so many people now have their business models based on helping neurodiverse people, what they call neurodiverse people. I'm very reluctant to kind of go barging in and saying, you can't do that, you've got to change your business model. If it's helping people, meaning of words changed.
No, my only concern in relation to that is sometimes I observe that some groups helping to people, especially families with autistic kids or family members, is like they create a kind of an illusion of possible that creates false hopes to family members, and that's the part that I found a bit dangerous.
Well, looking at it realistically, first of all, the people who pioneer it are the good people, and then there's the cowboys that come because they think it's going to be business. And there's a young woman in England who's done some fabulous work on that, on evaluating it. What was I going to say? Oh, well, but the bigger picture, of course, is that, our society is failing at the moment. Like in Australia, I think there's 19 unemployed people for every single job vacancy. And as in most countries, we've got right-wing Tory governments, but even Labor governments haven't done much in terms of they're still very punitive about employment. And there's it's almost this religious thing that if you get a job, suddenly everything will be okay. Like it's just like we should be able to respect people and not force everyone into work. It's almost a religion, and 19 to 1. And so one of my big interests is the punitive attitude to unemployed people. I would rather change that than see people and also I'd rather change that than to see people shoehorned into all sorts of jobs, because a lot of jobs are just not fitting a complex human being. There's really shitty jobs out there. So that's why I'm interested, like what's really happening. How do we regulate this industry, and how do we evaluate?
And as example, in Europe, even in Portugal and in Ireland, we have minorities of travels, and they have their own way. They don't. They have their own way of living. They want to do things like in the way that sometimes doesn't fit in what you just described, and sometimes the environment the media or society in general is always trying to find ways where they fit instead of letting be where they are, who they are.
Yeah. It's kind of like, in agriculture, we allow fields, I don't know, we probably still don't, but we should. We used to allow fields to lie fallow. Some people don't really find themselves. I didn't find myself till my late 40s or 50s. This preoccupation with work is just, I always think of, the sign on Auschwitz. It was Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free. No, it doesn't. That's the logic of it for me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I know it's a platitude, but they say if you follow your passion, you'll not work a day in your life. And I think that there's a grain of truth in that platitude, but it's very difficult for people to find that thing that they want to pursue and to make a living from doing something that they love when society is constructed in such a way that the expectation is you're going to turn up, you're going to do your 9 to 5, you're going to take home your salary and suck it up. So I think that we're at an inflection point, because what's happening with societal and technology models is that the current ways of working are failing. The technology is coming, and you've got the economies of platforms, and you've got gig economies, which are fraught with risk, but at the same time are going to probably be the catalysts to new ways of delivering stuff. To look at things like universal basic income, to allow people to do the things that they're good at, that they're passionate about, that can enrich society.
Neil, but
yes, I was about to say, and a universal basic income would be great. And what's happened in Australia is we've got this national insurance, disability insurance scheme now, and it just costs gazillions. It's very inefficient at the moment. And my daughter's just got the NDIS, and there's coordinators who coordinate the coordinators, and then I have to coordinate all of them. And I'm just thinking, why couldn't you just make the disability pension a living wage so that people could buy what they want, instead of getting these huge buckets of money that they don't know how to spend if they're lucky enough to? So it's kind of, because we don't trust people, and we have got this punitive work ethic, we just don't want to give anything away, and our society is so rich.
Yeah, I think that whole fundamental of trust is something that we need to re-examine. Trust in society, trust in business. The cost of not trusting is far greater than the cost of, a lot of times is far greater than the cost of the putting in place the checks and balances and infrastructure to prevent a breach of trust. There will always be breaches of trust, right? Some people will do something bad, but the cost of mopping up after someone doing something bad is less than the cost of trusting most people to be good. And that's something that I struggle with, because for me that's obvious. But I see time and time again in business and society that it's not the case, and so we create these huge bureaucracies and these barriers to enabling people to do good stuff as a result of our fear of someone doing bad stuff.
One of the things that I'm hopeful for all these neurodiversity startups is that disability inclusion, as done by government, never really worked. So I was hoping that this new positive, getting neurodivergent people into the workforce by emphasising their skills, but at the same time, we will slow down the pace of work if it becomes widespread. And so in a way, we might be humanising the workplace a lot more. So that is my hope, because it's the pace of all right, I'm going to use the C word, capitalism. It's that increasing pace that puts people under so much pressure. And I really learned that as when I was in Florida, I went to the National Stuttering Association, and stuttering they were interested in neurodiversity, and it's really interesting reading their stuff, because they talk about the pace of speech so much. And so now pace is like something that I think neurodiversity should be really looking at.
Yeah.
Slowing the pace.
Yeah.
of the workplace.
And yet the push is in the opposite direction. The push is faster, 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 ever accelerating. So, but whether that has to be human acceleration is a question. You know, whether some of that can be done by technology and allowing us to spend time to cogitate, to ruminate on stuff, and because yeah, we're definitely like candles burning at both ends, and at some point we're going to burn out.
Yeah, I was just noticing here in Australia, a lot of autistic girls, particularly, do librarianship courses. It's a very good. It's actually I worked in a library as well. I worked in IT before I was a mother. They're building magnificent libraries now, and but there's hardly any staff, and a lot of my autistic friends, including my daughter, have spent years volunteering. So there is a job there.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
another
absolutely.
thing. Disabled labour, or volunteers like me, because I was a carer and I couldn't do a full-time jobs. I just did almost everything as a volunteer, and yeah, that's just another. I don't know if I'm going off topic here, but I think that's a really big issue for neurodiversity, the exploitation of disabled labour.
Yeah, yeah.
That's something I'd like to change.
It's a huge issue, not just for neurodiversity, but in places like America where you essentially can't have a full-time job if you have a high level of disability benefits, because you will end up being financially penalized for working. So you get into this vicious cycle.
Anil, and some of those
I
advocates of
have that myself.
Yeah.
I've got that myself. I'm a sole
and
parent. I live in housing. The more if I earn, actually, they can't kick me out because of a grandfathering thing, but it's a total disincentive to do it. It's actually a poverty trap,
Yeah.
But you Neil, you mentioned about this the fact that following your passion, and most of the gurus of that in North America are quite fond of advocating. Oh, if you should work for free, you should, someone is giving you the privilege of working for them, you should take the opportunity. And I feel that is quite a risky and dangerous way of talking with people and driving them to create something when so you want them to be innovators, you want them to follow their passion, but you are putting it into a path that if they don't achieve what you somehow trying to promise them that they will achieve, it's basically a direct path for mental health issues.
So who says this? This is bizarre. They say you should have nothing. That's what we do. That's why my daughter does it. She's happier to go and work in a library because she loves it for nothing. And it's just exploitation. It's like, she'd like to be able to buy books, Well, you can't buy books. So she's well. No, anyway, it's just not on, is it? It's not on.
No, that's somehow some of the gurus of Startup America. Some of them often advocate for that.
Yeah. The whole sort of bootstrapping thing. The concept that you go and do your work for free, you work on your passion for free, you pay your dues by working for free, and then good things will come. When actually what you're doing is making someone else rich at your expense and at the expense of your health and mental health. We're running out of time, so I just want to say thank you very much, Judy. I know we've had a few glitches with the sound, but it's been a fascinating conversation. Need to thank our sponsors and friends and people like Barclays Access and Microlink and MyClearText for keeping us accessible and captioned and fed and watered and the lights on. So thanks to all of our supporters, and we really look forward to you joining us on Twitter.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really great to talk.